Forgiveness is a very freeing thing. It's freeing us from burdens, from judgment, from grudges. It's freeing us from the past. And all it's doing is grounding us deeper into the present moment. And when we're grounded in that present moment without all of those grudges, without that heavy burden that we're carrying, then we're in a place of love. We're in a place of peace. We're in a place of happiness. So much of my life is coming from a place of peace and love, whereas it used to come from a place of anger, frustration. That backpack of burdens was full. Whereas now I feel so much more free and so much more light, because I've learned that forgiveness is the tool to cleanse the consciousness. That's the thing that allows you to start fresh and start to look at things with a lens of love. And it's one of the most freeing things that I've ever experienced in my life. What's up? Welcome to my channel. My name's Alex. I'm a coach, and this podcast is all about self-development and helping you to live a happier, more fulfilling life. And on this week's In Focus session, we're going to be breaking down another Syd Banks talk. I was recently shared this talk in a coaching group that I'm part of. I'm going on another immersion in November, and Ankush, the coach, shared this talk with us this week. And he asked us to share our thoughts with the rest of the group after we'd listened to it a couple times. And what I thought I would do was I'd also bring this to you guys. Because as you know, I love to break down Syd Banks' work. His work speaks loudest to me out of everything I've ever come across. There's so much truth in what he shares, and there's so much truth in Syd's journey. He was a 43-year-old Scottish welder with no school qualifications or anything when he had his moment of enlightenment, and from that day his life changed significantly. He had no proper education, yet he was out there teaching the truth with a capital T of our existence and how we perceive all of our reality via thought. So this talk that I'm going to be breaking down today, I've got my notepad, it's called Forgiveness and the Power of Thought. Syd starts the talk by saying love and forgiveness coexist. You can't have one without the other. And this is just a really simple, beautiful thing I'm not going to dive too deep on, but I'm just loving the fact that he's saying if you're being loving, you are forgiving. And if you're being forgiven, you are being loving. It's just beautiful because they do coexist. You can't be loving and hold grudges, right? That's kind of what he's saying. And I love that. But then he goes on to say in the talk, the state of forgiveness leaves your mind free to enjoy without the weight of carrying grudges from the past. The state of non-forgiveness can be a very heavy burden to carry throughout your life. It will cause you nothing but grief and sorrow, and always it is self-destructive. And what I love about this is that Syd's basically saying that forgiveness is a true act of love, right? If you're being forgiven, then it's leaving your mind free from the grudges that it's been holding. It's freeing yourself from the weight of the grudge. And I've seen this in my own life. Like, I'm not going to lie to you guys and say I'm someone who's held loads of grudges in my life. I haven't really, if I'm honest. But I've seen it with the grudge I used to hold against myself. I used to hold a grudge against myself for having had a past of depression and anxiety and struggling with my mental health and being in a very dark place in my life. And I used to really judge the shit out of myself for that. I used to hold so much judgment on that every time I thought about it, it would just bring me back to the pain and the suffering. And the thing that really changed for me was learning to forgive myself for having innocently been in that position. And that's the key thing. It was innocent. I didn't know I was doing it at the time, and it was innocent. And when I could really see that I needed to be able to forgive myself in order to be free from it, then the grudge was no longer there. Whereas what was happening for many years is I was like carrying this grudge around on my back. And because I was carrying the grudge around on my back, it was affecting the way that I was still seeing everything, because I wasn't able to fully be loving, and it wasn't able to fully free my mind. As Syd says, forgiveness leaves your mind free. My mind was not free. It was carrying this grudge that I had against myself, and it was affecting the lens of which and the perception of which I see everything and was seeing everything around me. So it wasn't until I started to look in the direction, instead of trying to go back into the past and understand why it happened and understand why I was in that position, instead looking in the direction of forgiving myself for having innocently been in that position in the first time. And there's no work that needs to be done to do that, right? There's nothing that needs to be done. It's just forgiveness is an act of love, and that's it. And the second that you can learn to forgive, you are being loving and the grudges fade away. And I love that Syd brings it up in that talk and says it in such a beautiful way. And then there's another part of the talk where he says, To learn to forgive is to unload a lot from the very essence of your soul. It brightens your life. And if anybody ever tells you to go back into the past and go through all of that hell again, and to start having ill feelings towards anybody who has harmed you in the past, please be very careful. When you hold a grudge against anyone, in actuality, what you are doing is holding yourself a prisoner of your past. Then he says, the past is no longer a reality, only the present exists, and it's only in the present you can find your happiness. And this really spoke to me, man. Like, it really reminded me of like when I was going through my phase of having recognized and coming to the realization that I was depressed. I started to look into many different ways to try and to overcome it in a way. And one of the routes I took, and this isn't like a dig at therapy in general, this is just my experience, is I went to some therapy and I had like 5 sessions. All I felt that we did is look into the past and try and find some kind of idea of why it ended up in the place that I had. And it didn't, I just remember it didn't resonate with me at the time because I didn't feel like there was anything overly traumatic in my life that had happened. There was no like moment that stuck out to me that had caused anything. Yet it felt like we were kept going back and back and back and back to try and find out what was going on. What I found from that was that going back into the past was trying to put me through the hell and to start have ill feelings towards something. It was like, let's go into the past, let's find out what happened, and let's bring all of those feelings back up again so that you can relive them. But it's like, that just seems crazy to me. And I remember at the time thinking, this seems a bit weird. Like, I don't really feel like I need to go back and look into anything. What I want to do is look forward. And looking forward is like clearing the slate, starting afresh in a way. And now that I'm, listening to this talk from Syd, it's really speaking to me, and I was on that journey of forgiveness. What I was looking to do was forgive myself. That was it. I was looking to forgive myself for having been in that position innocently, like I said earlier, so that I could then be free to move forward with a clean slate. I love how Syd says, like, when you hold a grudge against anyone, in actuality, what you are doing is holding yourself a prisoner of your past. And it's like, what he's saying is if like someone wrongs you, right, and you're holding on to that, the only person who's suffering in that situation is you, because you're the one who is now a prisoner to the thinking you have around this story of the person who wronged you or how they wronged you or whatever it is. In actuality, what Syd says is the past is no longer a reality. Only the present exists. And it's only in the present you can find your happiness. And I love that because what he's pointing to is that if our thinking is what creates our reality in every moment, then it's through our thought that the feeling of happiness will come to us. Whereas if we're focusing that thinking on going back into the past and looking at who's wronged us and looking at the grudges and looking at all the bad stuff that's happened, we're looking at negative thoughts, or we're bringing up negative thoughts. If we're bringing up negative thoughts, there's no way that we're going to be able to experience happiness, because it's impossible to have the two things coincide. If you're clearing your mind of those negativities, then what comes through is happiness, because the positive feeling arises within you. And I really love that. I'm going to read that last bit again. The past is no longer a reality. Only the present exists. And it's only in the present you can find your happiness. And it's funny because in the coaching group that I'm in for the immersion, we had a webinar this week and we were talking about what are we judging ourselves for? And one of the things that came up in conversation was around health. I have had and still do have some, but I have had a lot of judgment around my health in the past because I've had a lot of football injuries, knee injuries, ankle injuries, hip, you name it. Like I joked and said anything from the eyebrows down is pretty much messed up in my body. And I've spent a lot of time trying to undo those injuries, physio, gym, stretching, foam rolling, etc. And I used to have such a judgment on myself for not being able to find myself in a better position physically, health-wise. And what I realized is that there's no point me hanging on to that, because the past has been and gone. It's done. My body is as it is now. So if I'm being present and understanding that the present is the only thing that exists, then all I need to focus on is what I can do today, now, for my body. It could be going for a walk. It could be foam rolling, stretching, some light gym work. It could be sitting in my chair with the correct posture and not slouching, which I do all the time. But there's so many ways that I can just look at the situation of where I'm at right now and just think, okay, what do I need to do in the present moment, and be at peace with that. If I'm holding on to something more, then I'm bringing back that negative feeling, the judgment that I've held over myself for so many years, which has caused me a lot of suffering. And it's suffering needlessly because I don't need to be doing it. Because in actuality, if I can be forgiving and loving towards myself, then the thing that comes through is the positive feeling, which then allows me to say, okay, my mind is a lot more free now, so let me just focus on what I can do today. And that's it. It might be a stretch before bed. It might be, I'm getting into my 10,000 steps every day at the minute. It might be going to the gym 3 times a week. It might be doing nothing sometimes. It's sometimes the best thing to do. It could be a quick stretch, when I get up from my desk, whatever it is. But recognizing that the past is the only thing that exists, there's no point me going back into the past or looking too far into the future to try and figure out what I'm going to be doing, or what should have happened, or what could have happened, etc., etc., because it's just causing me more internal suffering. Whereas if I just sit with the present and understand this is all I have right now, so what can I do right now, my mind becomes free, the forgiveness sets in, the grudges drop away, and I'm free to do what I want to do, and the suffering has diminished. It's dissipated, it's floated away. And I think that's so powerful, because we forget that the present is the only thing we're ever experiencing. We're only ever experiencing our thinking in any moment, and that's it. That's all we ever have. Now and now and now and now. It's a continuous unfolding of nows. There's another part where Syd goes on to say, it's our thoughts that create the feeling of love, caring, sharing. It's thought that makes us see life in a positive manner. Therefore, I say to you, beware of those who tell you to go into the past to try to fix the present. They're taking you back to the sickness. And he said, never, for even a moment, believe that a negative feeling will assist you to find happiness. This is an impossibility. And to me, what he's saying there is like, we want to hold a grudge over someone because we think that that's the thing that's going to make us happy. We can't forgive someone because if they've wronged us, then we can't forgive them for that thing because they've done something wrong against us or to us or whatever it may be. So we think the happiness comes through holding the grudge. If we're looking at grudges as a negative thought and a negative feeling, then what Syd's saying is that we're never going to find happiness in that, because it's impossible. The negative feelings and the positive feelings, they can't exist at the same time. It's quite binary in a way. If we're experiencing a positive feeling, a positive thought, then yeah, we'll be coming from forgiveness, we'll be coming from love, we'll be coming from caring, and all of that, and empathy. Whereas if we're just coming at things from the negative feeling, then we're only ever just keeping ourselves stuck in that place. We're keeping ourselves stuck in the suffering. We're keeping ourselves stuck in a moment that doesn't exist anymore. And I love just the way he just says, don't think even for a moment, or believe even for a moment, that a negative feeling will assist you to find happiness. This is an impossibility. And then at the very end of the speech, he says, forgiveness cleanses your soul. It cleanses your consciousness. It makes you feel better. It makes you see life better. It brings a feeling of gratitude. Forgiveness, to me, what I'm hearing from this talk is that it's a very freeing thing. It's freeing us from burdens. It's freeing us from judgment. It's freeing us from grudges. It's freeing us from negative feelings. It's freeing us from the past. And all it's doing is grounding us deeper into the present moment. And when we're grounded in that present moment, without all of those grudges, without that heavy burden that we're carrying through non-forgiveness, then we're in a place of love. We're in a place of peace. We're in a place of happiness. And I'm seeing this so much in my life right now. So much of my life is coming from a place of peace and love, whereas it used to come from a place of anger, frustration, judgment, sadness, and things like that. Heavy feelings, burdens, that backpack of burdens was full. Whereas now I feel so much more free and so much more light, because I've learned that forgiveness is the tool to cleanse the consciousness. Like Syd says, it cleanses the consciousness, it cleanses the mind. That's the thing that allows you, and has allowed me, to start fresh in any moment, and start to then look forward and start to look at things with a lens of love, with a lens of appreciation, with a lens of gratitude. And it's one of the most freeing things that I've ever experienced in my life. And I'd love to know what you are getting from listening to this episode. I'd love to hear what's the learning, what's the wisdom, what's the thought that's arising within you right now as you listen to this. To do so, hit me up on Instagram at @IamAlexManzi, DM me and let me know what you're getting from this episode. And if you know someone who you think would benefit from hearing this episode, then be sure to send them a link, send them a screenshot, but let them know that it's going to be beneficial for them. Tell them how it could be helpful for them. I started this podcast because I wanted to start to inspire a positive change in people. And you could be a part of that by sharing this episode with someone you know today. So I want to thank Michaela Atsu for producing and editing this episode. I also want to thank Hobgoblin for providing the sick music that you hear. And as always, I want to thank you for spending time with me today, and I'll see you for the next episode.